Hello, and welcome to the WWIA podcast. We're honored to have you join us in our mission to bring honor, connection, and healing to America's combat-wounded Purple Heart heroes. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, we welcome you. If you're a returning listener, thanks for coming back. Please be sure to tell others about our podcast and leave us a review if you're enjoying what you're hearing. We've got another incredible guest that we're honored to introduce you to on the latest episode of the WWIA podcast. Today, WWIA Founder and CEO John McDaniel shares a wonderful conversation with Purple Heart hero and WWIA guide, Mr. Asa Barrett. Asa has been an avid outdoorsman since a young age. He grew up in a rural town outside Tulsa, Oklahoma, hunting and fishing with his father and grandfather at the family ranch, and also worked as a guide for a hog hunting outfitter on weekends during high school. His love for the outdoors and hunting became a passion that has continued into adulthood. Asa started his military career in 2009, worked as a team leader in a heavy weapons squad, and was deployed to Afghanistan, spending his deployment in the foothills of the Hindu Kush mountains, operating daily dismounted and mounted patrols. In 2011, Asa received injuries to his back, neck, and a severe concussion during an IED attack. He bravely fought through his injuries and remarkably continued the duration of his deployment, receiving the Purple Heart Medal for injuries sustained during the combat operation. He experienced many more close encounters during intense firefights and is thankful for the lifelong friendships forged by battle during his time in theater. Asa currently works as a project manager on a high-security database center and conducts numerous other projects across the country. We hope you enjoy getting to know more about this outstanding American patriot. Let's join the conversation with John and Asa now.
Hi, I'm John McDaniel, founder and CEO of the Wounded Warriors in Action Foundation, and this is our podcast, Honor, Connect, Heal. And with me today, I've got a very special guest, somebody who I admire and has been working hard for the foundation for a few years. Asa Barrett, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So for our listeners out there, Asa hails from Oklahoma. Okay, right? You're in, is it right to say an Okie? Is that right?
Okie from Muskogee. I am a true Okie from Muskogee. I was born in Muskogee, Oklahoma. So no, I'm true Okie from Muskogee, and even to the true Okie fashion, I was born at home, a little kind of farm home. So I fit the bill, that's for sure.
That's awesome, man. Yep. Okay, and where are you now?
So I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I've lived here my adult life. I went to school, a little small town south of Tulsa during high school, and afterwards moved directly up and worked for a few years, and made the choice to join the Oklahoma National Guard, and that's kind of what started my adventure.
Yeah. So for everybody out there, to level the bubbles, if you will, Asa's a guide. He's been with the foundation for how long now?
I believe I'm on 6 years. Coming up on 6 years.
That's crazy, man. Time flies.
Yeah, it does.
Well, it's good to see you. Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to our chat here. So Asa is a Purple Heart recipient. He was wounded in combat. He was with a National Guard unit, right, out of Oklahoma?
Correct. The 45th Infantry Brigade. I was in Charlie Company 1279.
1279. Mm-hmm. Okay, and you earned the Combat Infantryman's badge because you were in the GU.
Yep.
And then you earned your Purple Heart. What is it? 2011? Is that right?
Correct. It was July 22nd, 2011.
Yeah, and I remember you were telling me this story a little bit. You were hit by an IED, right? Is that right?
Correct. Yes. Just kind of we landed on my little combat outpost, Capoeira. I actually landed the 4th of July. And that afternoon, trying to get myself kind of situationally aware to my little outpost and checking the firing points. And we had half a special forces group that was there. I believe it was the 5th group. And they had fireworks. And I remember somebody saying, hey, the special forces guy's going to shoot fireworks off tonight. And I was just thinking, why poke the bear, right? But I quickly learned, that's how we do it out there. And, they shot fireworks that night off, and then directly afterwards, a 3-sided ambush on a little outpost. And so that was my, first real day in country, if you will, as far as my little outpost. And I quickly learned, like, okay, this is real. We're doing it. So
let's talk, man. I got to hear about this, because I've heard a lot of things, seen a lot of things, but I never heard anybody talk about shooting off fireworks. So you're telling me the 5th SF Special Forces Group was shooting off like conventional fireworks that you and I would use like in our backyard on the 4th of July, shooting them up. Now you're in the Hindu Kush, right? You're about 9,000 feet up in the above sea level, or
we were
up in the mountains, and the SF guys are shooting off fireworks. And let me guess, so that you could get shot at, and we could find where they were, and then go kill guys, right?
Exactly. They called them out, on America's birthday, so it was great. It was
on the 4th of July too.
Yep, it was on the 4th of July.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I'm smiling about it. It's not funny. There's nothing funny about it, but so I think a comedian once referred to humor, and the equation for humor was tragedy plus time equals funny.
Yep.
And some tragedy plus time doesn't equal funny. But when you start talking about like, you can't make this stuff up. Like, here's the SF guy shooting off fireworks at night, and you guys are like, really, dudes, really? And then and then the show starts, right? But this allows you to pinpoint where the bad guy is, and then go do your business, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So tell us about what happens when the day. If you don't mind, please. I mean, I'd like to hear more about that. Tell me about the day you got hurt.
Yeah, so we were in country. I guess this would have been about 2 weeks, So it was July 22nd when my truck was hit with the IED. But what led to that point, we were with the Afghan police. We had the local police and the Afghan army, and we rolled through. I mean, we were there for presence patrols and going through, but we were set on mission for a 10-day op. We were a company-sized mission, so we were meeting up with our sister units. And that morning, when we got down to the Kandak, the little Afghan police base, we got down there and got communications, got them spun up, and they told us, we're not going to go with you today. We don't feel safe. We won't have escorts on the way back. And so automatically, right away, we kind of got, some red flags, what's going on. And at that point, we had a mission to do. We had to go. So we chose at this point now, speed of security. We got to get through here, push through, and meet up and do our job, right? And so driving out that day, and again, we're in the mountains, so we're driving down kind of waddy roads, and they have culverts. And for me, you see all those telltale signs that you hear about all the time. The women and children worn out, things were quiet. There weren't many vehicles regardless out there, but you just felt it. You knew that something was out there. And this is a known ambush spot. The roads were black, right? So we pushed through, and I remember as I was going over the culvert, I was lead vehicle in a Max Pro. And I'll say that I was on a Crow system, right? So the computer remote operated. And I believe that's what honestly saved my life, because we kind of knew their practices. They were hitting the lead vehicles, and that's why we had a Crow on there. But I don't know. As I was going over this culvert, I can remember what I can remember of this event. Just feeling something inside of me, like wanted to scream "go" to my driver. And as soon as we went over that, it was kind of a blind curve. I just felt the explosion, and I remember just a bright light and just feeling the vehicle going up, and then I was out. And when I came to, fire suppression system had went off. We had an interpreter and my driver and then our TC. We were all really, really banged up, right? Sitting in my seat, my right leg kind of got pinned down, and so there was an explosion. The rest of my body went up, and I was just all contorted and just kind of beat up. And I just, when I came back to, just muscle memory kind of kicked in, and me trying to get my weapon back up, trying to talk, but I felt like it was just one of those, mumbled stuff was coming out, just trying to finally bring myself back together. And I remember my legs just hurting, my whole body hurting, and in my mind, I was dead. And I was sitting there looking at myself and looking at everybody else. I thought to myself, I'm dead, And as I was coming back to, I could feel my legs were still there, and I honestly allowed the emotions kind of take over and had some tears of joy, And I screamed to all of us, we're still alive, we're still alive, we're still in the fight, and we did everything we could to get back up. We had zero comms, of course, everything was knocked out, and I didn't mention this, but my youngest brother was deployed with me, same combat outpost. He was in the National Guard as well. He was in an engineer battalion, and I got my orders, and came to me and said, "Hey, Sam, I'm going with you." The big brother in me was like, "No, don't do it." But he wanted to be there by my side, and through training and everything, he was my same platoon. And once we got in country, our commander took him as his RTO. So he stayed a little back a little bit more behind the rear. Which gave some relief to me, right? But opposite for him, I was out in mission more, and so he was. But at the same time, I could hear his voice, right? He was calling everything up, whether it be air traffic or anything. So hearing his voice on that stuff, it was pretty soothing. So not only did I have a brother, but I have my brothers in arms, true blood brother there with me. So that was, and the reason I say this is because he was in this convoy with us. He was the back of the convoy.
Wow.
And we had zero comms, and just remember in the back of my brain thinking my brother knows that I'm hit in the lead vehicle, And so I'm going to imagine what he's thinking right now. And so as we finally came back to, I'm helping the interpreter out because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and he went up and he broke some vertebrae in his neck, and he was the worst off of all of us. And so trying to relieve him and had him on a stretcher. And at this point, we finally got out of the vehicle, and we were everybody's pulling security. And honestly, just kind of counting the lucky stars, right? But I knew my brother was back there, and I heard some people in an element kind of coming up behind us. And at this point, I just knew it was him. And I remember just thinking, like, I couldn't look at him. I couldn't look at him because I didn't want to cry in front of everybody. You get emotional, But I remember him coming up, and he saw our interpreter on a stretcher, and he was saying, "Is that Asa? Is that Asa?" And I just looked around. I said, "Can't kill a Barrett." I was giving a big old hug. We laughed, we cried together, and so that was a great experience having him there, and then again having that relief. But he had to continue mission and go on patrol after that for the next 10 days while I was back at the rear trying to recover.
Wow, and I did not know that.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I had a brother. His name was Bruce. He's now gone, and I don't want to get all emotional.
Yeah.
Thinking about what that would be like to be in combat with my brother and have that same scenario happen, whether I was the guy that got blown up or he was. But oh my goodness! And then I have two young boys, Dylan and Luke, and they're 9 and 7, soon to be 10 and 7, and I just, when you were telling that story, I was just thinking of, like, what would it be like, to be a dad and know that your boys are deployed and then later find out that one of them got wounded and the other was there to help save him.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even get my head around that, right? That's amazing. What an amazing story. Thanks for sharing that with us. Wow.
You're welcome. Yeah, just to throw one more in there in the mix. I'm one of 6 kids. I have an oldest brother and 2 older sisters, and then myself, and then my 2 younger brothers. But the one I was mentioning, the youngest, was a National Guard. We have the one, Joseph, which is in between us, and he was active duty. He was an MP. He was at Fort Riley. So we were in country for 4 months, and then he deployed. So all 3 Barrett boys, minus the oldest, was in country. So all 3 of us were there at once. Yeah.
That's like the there was a I'm trying to think of the movie with Tom Hanks where they
Band of Brothers.
No, that wasn't Band of Brothers. It was what's that one where it was D-Day and they're assaulting the
Saving Private Ryan. There we go.
Saving Private Ryan. Thank you. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. I love that movie.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a scene in there where there was 5 brothers. That is a true story.
Mm-hmm.
5 brothers deployed in combat in support of D-Day, activities in the invasion of Europe, and 3 of them, or I'm sorry, 4 of them, 4 of the 5 were killed in action,
mm-hmm.
and some typewriter, according to the story, who's, writing the condolence letters, sees this name like 2 or 3 times and then kind of puts it together and then, sends it up the chain of command like, hey, there's five brothers that deployed in support of this combat action, World War II, the invasion of Europe. 4 of them are now gone. Mm-hmm. No stories about Saving Private Ryan, the one son who's still alive. Mm-hmm. And it goes all the way up to the chain of command to, the chief of staff of the army or something like this. And he says, get him out of there. Mm-hmm. Or I don't care what it takes, find that boy, get him back home. Yep. And here you are with, 3 of your, 5 brothers?
Total of 4 brothers. So we have one brother back at home. Mm-hmm.
Wow, man. Wow. 2 of you are on the battlefield at the same time and one of you gets wounded. That's amazing. Wow, what an amazing story. Mm. That's just, and the other thing that you said that struck me, and I think this comes from, there's another movie out there, We Were Soldiers Once and Young. I think that that's the name of the book that I read. Hal Moore wrote that, I think. And the movie We Were Soldiers, I think is, Once or something like that is the actual book, We Were Soldiers Once and Young. I think it's called We Were Soldiers. It's got Mel Gibson in it. And he describes, he plays Hal Moore in the movie, and he describes in that movie, I think it was there, where, he describes that there was nothing wrong, like you're on this patrol and you're like, there's nothing wrong right now. And the problem is that there's nothing wrong. Mm-hmm. You see, yep. Like that, there's no women on the street. There's no children on the street, and at first blush, it's like, well, there's just nothing wrong here, but there is something wrong, mm-hmm. And that's that sixth sense that you get that's just usually tuned like a piano after you've been, in the goo for a while, that you're like, you pick up on those anomalies, the patterns and the anomalies, what's right, what's not right, what's the same, what's different. And after a while, you become dialed in on those things. And those are the things you need to focus on, is those, those outliers, those anomalies. But wow, what a story. I really appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
That's amazing. Yeah. Wow. So we'll talk about the WWIA here in a minute and your involvement with our nation's combat wounded as a guide for the foundation. But let's talk about your work. Tell us about what are you doing right now for work? I think it's interesting to me. It always has been. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So when I decided to join the National Guard, that's kind of one of the reasons why. Like a lot of us, I just felt the calling. I wanted to do my part. I have my grandfather was from World War II, and one was actually a prisoner of war at Battle of Corregidor and Bataan Death March. So he was almost prisoner of war for almost 4 years. And so
he had you get a Purple Heart if you're a prisoner of war. So that's running in your family. Wow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I think we all just kind of had that. I always looked up to him, his sacrifice, and from both sides, both my grandfathers. And so that's what kind of brought me to the National Guard, because I was already kind of starting a career. So I work in low voltage communications with fiber optics, your structural cabling, with security systems, camera systems, access control, and things like that. And I've done for about 16 years, a lot of big projects and data centers, and a lot of the government VA hospitals. I was a government contractor for almost 5 years, and so to back that up, that's why I chose National Guard, because I still wanted to be able to further my career and still be able to serve my country. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm instead of an installer and integrator, I'm actually in sales now. So it's the same industry, same thing, but now I'm selling to contractors and end users and things like that. So I again live here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but I go back and forth from Arkansas, and I get to travel quite a bit, which is nice, because if I get one spot too long, I start getting a little anxious, and I like to move around. So it's good that I have that ability to be able to see the world and then still meet new people, and not necessarily force myself to see new people, but it just took me outside my comfort zone of want to kind of withdraw in some ways and my old habits, if you will, of coping with PTSD and things. Like that's one thing I like about this job. It keeps me out there meeting new people and pushing my boundaries.
That's good. It's personal growth, right? That's the thing. Yeah. You can either turn inward or you can turn outward, and it's it's better to turn outward.
It is. A hard lesson to learn for me, because I think all of us, sometimes as men or, even soldiers in general, don't necessarily want to reach out for help or anything. And it took me quite a while to realize that I can't do everything on my own, and I need help from people. And so it was a humbling experience for me, but
well, you grew up probably in a family that was very self-sufficient, right? And that's, if you live on a farm in a country and a ranch sort of thing, which I think you did, right?
Yeah, correct.
And you got your family, and you get brothers and mom and dad, and community support. I mean, you learn to fend for yourself, and that becomes like your culture. That's just sort of what you grew up doing, and it's hard for people like us often to ask for help, and especially when you need it, and the most. Especially if you were raised that way, sort of inculcated into who you are in your essence. But interesting. So, well, do you want to plug your company's name? Did you already say that once?
Yeah, so I work for MBH Reps. We're a rep firm, and I have about 12 different manufacturers I represent. So I have a big line, a line card, if you will, of all the different manufacturers that I'm able to work with. Different contractors and things like that. So MBH Reps is the company I work for right now.
Cool. Well, I think they're lucky to have you, buddy.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're a superstar. Okay, so you're also, the one thing that sticks out, in my mind when I think, of you, Asa Barrett, I go, this guy's a traditional archer. And for those that don't know, that's a traditional archery is. You're using a long bow or a recurve. These are, basically primitive weapons. They're more advanced than they were, 40 years ago. That's for sure. 50. They've been around forever. The Romans, you know what I mean? The traditional archer.
The struggle stick, as I call it.
A struggle stick?
Yeah. So,
I never heard that. That's true. That's how I grew up, man. I mean, I grew up as a traditional archer. That's why I gravitated towards you right away. I'm like, I get this. But my dad had, not to tell a quick story, but my dad had in the basement when I was growing up in Wisconsin, he had up by his workbench, he had this old recurve bow that it was up beyond my reach. I remember looking up in the rafters. He had it hanging up in a couple of nails, to include a whole quiver full of wooden arrows with, fletching on them. And I remember, getting it down on occasion and just pulling the arrows out and looking at the fixed broadheads on there and thinking to myself, my gosh, I was just fascinated by the fletching and fascinated by the broadheads, and the bow was strung, but it wasn't, properly strung, and then my dad showed me later on how to string it and then, how to shoot it. And there was a couple of, arrows in there with field tips. And then, we lived in the country, and I just shot the heck out of that bow and got good at, just shooting, at traditional archery, and understanding aim, point, and draw, and all this, hold factors and the things that make you, good archer. And that's how I learned. And then, of course, compound bows came around, and guys started using mechanical sights and all this other stuff. And these things became just deadly accurate, and they were much more like rifles, but still the fundamentals of archery are pretty much still in play, whether you're a traditional archer or not. But the one thing about traditional archery, as you know, and many others probably do listen to this, is you got to practice a lot. And where you can take a compound bow that's got iron sights on it with a peephole and basically go out and confirm your zero and fling 5 or 6 arrows and go, yeah, I'm good to go to the wood line. But if you're a traditional archer, that's not really the case. You got to fling a lot of arrows, and you got to stay current and practice a lot, right?
You do. Yeah. So I've bow hunted and shot bows for going on about 25 years. I originally started out with a compound bow. I grew up again, in the country and just being outside, being outdoors all the time. Usually get away from chores and things like that. I was just find me in the woods somewhere. I feel like I've lived most of my life in a tree, either climbing trees for hunting purposes or just for fun. But yeah, I started shooting my compound bow, and it took about 10 years. And I've always really looked up to Fred Bear. Yeah. So him and his archery, and just seeing all the stories and reading stories about him, and has always looked up to him. And we actually found a completely random walking, and we were walking down the road one day, and we found a longbow on the side of a road, of all things. And
Wow.
my mother was the one that found it, and I ended up getting a string for it. And I remember I could barely pull it back, and I just had so much interest in it because it was so technical and difficult and a kind of new challenge. And that's what really spurred my interest in getting to traditional archery. And yeah, like I said, they do call it the struggle stick because it is a struggle, but it's fulfilling to me, and also just getting out there and practicing and let my mind kind of wander a little bit, and let some thoughts escape. So it's really brought a lot of joy to me.
Yeah, it's you and the stick, and the arrows, and nature, man, and that's it. Wow, that's interesting. So you started out with a compound, and then found a recurve or longbow, and got into traditional archery, which is the opposite way that I did. Because I'm several years older than you. There were no compound bows when I was growing up. It was all recurve, and then I remember there was I want to say it was like a Ben Franklin store or something like that in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And this would have been, let's just call it 1978, I'm guessing, something like that. And my parents had a business that was downtown, and I used to, go exploring. And I think it was a Ben Franklin store. I don't think it's there anymore, but Ben Franklin used to have, it was like a dime store, but on steroids. It was like the precursor to Walmart or something, You could buy everything from feed to lollipops in there. And so they had this, I looked up and I saw this bow, and I'm like, oh, it's got pulleys on it. I'm like, holy crap, what is that? And it was I'll think of it. I'll think of the manufacturer. It was a firearm manufacturer. It was a Bantam. The name of the bow was a Bantam. I can't remember the actual name. I'll think of it in a minute. But anyway, so it's got these pulleys on it, and I kept staring at it, and it was small. It was very compact. And I remember going back to my mom's office and, Mom, there's this thing, and it's got pulleys on it, and cables in it, and so I'll be darned if I didn't figure out a way to get them to buy that for me. I mean, birthday or Christmas or whatever, but that changed my life. I mean, because the arrow speed, the speed at which you could fling arrows with a compound bow was like twice that of a recurve. The recurve I started out on was a fiberglass bow that my dad, that one that I was telling you about earlier that my dad had, it was fiberglass. And that thing pulled at 45 pounds. I got it up at Camp Hackett. I shot my first deer with that, but I can tell you it was a game changer. If you could put, now these things are shooting 300-400 feet per second, but, back then, maybe I was generating 125 feet per second. I don't know. It wasn't much, but
yeah, with my longbow, I'm about 500 grains or so, but I'm shooting about 180 feet per second.
Yeah, but you're close too. Like that's the other thing is like I love up close and personal, man. Yeah, I mean, that's how I grew up hunting, and even though today I've graduated to a crossbow because I just can't, I can't pull like I used to because I'm a little banged up, but. They're shooting at 400. I still like to be close. Like I'll find a spot where I'm going to have to take a shot, like up in the north woods of Wisconsin, even though we could, these Raven crossbows, we got to shoot out to 100 meters, no problem. I don't take those shots. But I like to be within 30 yards, which is about the maximum that I think I would take or feel comfortable taking a shot with a traditional bow.
Yeah. Yeah. I try to keep them 20 yards and in. That's ideal, right? Closer the better. But that's one reason I really do like archery as much, is because, again, it is kind of up close and personal. And I can't, countless times if the deer's out 40, 50 yards and those things like that, it makes you understand the animal a little better, for that next time to either, hey, all right, well, why was that animal at that distance? What were they eating? What were they, the travel corridor, these things like that. So that made me really pay attention a lot more. And I feel I learned a lot more about, especially about white-tailed deer in the woods and things like that. So it's helped me in my hunting journey.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love studying them. I mean, just watching them in their natural environment when they don't know you're there and they're relaxed and they're doing things. I'm just fascinated. I've always been fascinated by whitetails, especially big whitetail bucks. I mean, I've had only maybe a handful of encounters in 40 plus years of hunting them. But every one of those encounters is just indelibly etched in my brain. Like I can remember the finite details because it imprinted on me, and I don't know why, but it certainly has. But it's a very special and intimate experience, right? And we take, I take harvesting an animal, very, very seriously, and that's big juju and personally to me. Mm-hmm. Whether that's a buck or a doe or any large game animal or any animal for that matter, I mean, to me it's very personal, and I know it is for a lot of guys, and I'm sure it's the same for you. I mean, you strike one of those guys that before you draw on something or pull a trigger on something, you've already made a conscious decision that you're going to do this. And, it's a very, very important moment, the moment of truth, especially with an arrow, having it find its mark versus, missing or worse yet, wounding an animal. Guys like us take that very, very seriously, and to the point of, to the tune of, I've spent all night out in the woods more than once in my life in the dark, in the cold, the wolves, seriously.
Yeah. After searching,
trying to find something that I wounded, and going back to camp and changing my clothes, because I was sweating and cold or freezing wet or whatever, and then going back out there, and then going back out the next morning until I find it. That's just important, and it's just part of the deal. Like that's part of the adventure, right? So, and your responsibility. It's not just an adventure; it's the responsibility.
Correct.
That you have, that awesome responsibility about, I took a life and, I'm going to do everything I can to recover this and, because it's the right thing to do. And that's food for my freezer and my family.
Definitely.
So, yeah. Really cool.
Definitely. When you make that decision, like you said, you want to be the most ethical as you possibly can be and respect that animal. And I already have in the back of my brain, I'm kind of saying thank you to that animal and, Mother Nature for allowing me and giving me this opportunity to harvest this animal and be able to eat that and provide food for myself and my friends, because I do give food away quite a bit. I like beef jerky and other things like that. So it's a gift of love in a lot of ways for me to give something that I work so hard for, give that away and let somebody else enjoy it as well.
I get that. I'm the same. I'm the same way. I absolutely love to prepare. Matter of fact, tonight I won't go into it, but it's funny that you bring it up. But tonight I'm teaching somebody how to blacken fish. That's just there's an art to it. The culinary side, I take that very seriously because wild game, whether that's fish or some other protein, it's organic. It's delicious. If you prepare it proper, there's nothing better. There's no, there aren't any, these artificial hormones, growth hormones, or, all this stuff that they're, pumping into chickens and cows and whatnot that increase the yield. There's none of that with an organic protein, And
Yep.
anyway, that's not what the show's about today, but we are chatting about it. Yeah, so let's talk about the WWIA as we kind of roll into the last part of the podcast here. So you were one of the individuals that that got selected. The way that it works today, it used to be years ago. I hand selected all the guides because I was on all the events, and I found 10 guys in about 10 years. That I thought had the possessed the the right skill set, the right attitude, the right amount of intelligence and will and capability to be guides for the foundation, carry this thing forward into the next into the next evolution of and growth of the organization. And then I said about 10 years ago, after I started, I got to back off of doing all this and let you guys gals take charge of the thing. And I thought, well, I'll have the guides that we have, the 10 guides that we have at the time, about 10 years ago. I said, it's your job to find these guys and gals. I mean, it took me 10 years to find 10. That was about one a year, but we weren't doing as many operations as we are today. And so at the guide schools, the first, 2 or 3 iterations of guide schools, and I'll tell this next generation or this next group in June, this summer, when we have it up there at Camp Hackett again, we're training 6 more guides. I want to say the same thing. I want to say, hey, it's your job to find, these right people to be, here. And this is the kind of the attributes that we're looking for, sort of thing. And you were one of those guys that was selected by our current set of guides. Do you remember your first WWIA event?
I do. It was up at Camp Hackett, and that experience for me, just kind of to leading up into it. My boss at the time, he had mentioned you. He said, "Hey, I have this great gentleman that has this great foundation organization, and he really loved what you were doing, and he knew that I had a Purple Heart, and I'm a big hunter." So he gave the introduction, and I signed up and went on the first event at Camp Hackett. And it was, I remember this. It was you and Jake Whipke.
Yeah.
And I remember going up there with my bow, and I didn't know what to expect. I'm an outdoorsman. I love hunting. I was like, man, this is gonna be fun. I get to spend some time with some veterans, and I knew a little bit, what we stood for, and but I felt it that time, right? Me going there again, just going into it, thinking I'm gonna have a good time to go hunt, and sitting around the campfire and just spending that time with you, with Jake, and the rest of the other heroes that were there on that event. Something inside of me just kind of made me want that even more. I didn't realize, I think, at the first time that how much it just really meant to me. And so thank you for asking me to be part of the team, because honestly, it's changed my life. And I go through life just like everybody. We have our ups and downs in life, and anytime I go to one of these events, during and afterwards, I sit back and it fills my cup, and I can spend time outside, but also share stories with other brothers and sisters in arms, and hear their experiences, and then see the kind of the light inside them. It's always hard to say goodbye, but at the same time, you have these great memories, and you still have, these relationships that you've built. And so I've just met some really amazing people that have just kind of blessed my life. And I really, really thank you for asking me to be part of Wounded Warriors in Action. It's been fantastic, and it's been great for me.
Well, you honor me, my friend. And it's our pleasure to do that. Camp Hackett's a very special place. Obviously, it's where the foundation really has its roots up there in the north woods of Wisconsin, and there is a little news flash. Not that I'm letting the cat out of the bag, but I don't want to say we stacked the deck at Camp Hackett, but the people that get to go up to Camp Hackett, are really usually pretty somebody that's already been identified as somebody that that I should meet. Okay. and that's kind of how that's kind of how that happens. Because I don't get, in the Army, we would call it battlefield circulation. Like the boss gets to go out and see the troops and the junior leaders and this kind of thing, and gets to be seen and gets to know what's going on. But, I can't do that. I mean, I just, there's too much stuff going on where now, it's in this phase of the organization's growth and maturity, whereby I become less and less I guess significant, or my role is changed a little bit or a lot as we grow. But this idea of finding great Americans like you who were wounded in combat, are interested in outdoor sporting events, hunting and fishing in particular, and who have a passion for it and are willing and able to share that that knowledge and do well in that space. That space is very special space, and I respect it. I was not wounded in combat. Well, I just have a very soft spot in my heart for those who were. And I thought to myself years ago, well, I would just, I think I have to be, I have to respect what I do. That's personally like me. I have to respect it. And if I respect it, then I know that other people will respect it as well. And focusing our energy on those that were in combat and were wounded and did earn the Purple Heart, that to me is a special, sacred thing. And so every day that I'm doing this job, whether it's in the field or back here in the office, I carry that with me, because it's a respect that can't be undone. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You can't take away. And from my perspective, you can't, it can't be devalued. And so that's why I try so hard. And I think that if anybody has that amount of respect for something and is motivated by it, you're going to work hard to get that as right as possible. Mm-hmm. And then when guys like you and other veterans like you are identified and get on this team and adopt a similar attitude, that I want to give back. I want to be a part of this thing, so that I can share my experience and I can help others enjoy and get turned on to the things that I'm turned on by. Now you really have something, and especially when you can put them together in a group with all these wonderful dynamics happening, where you feel like, hey, I really am part of a team. Mm-hmm. Then this is a small entity in the grand scheme of things. That there aren't that many Purple Heart recipients, thank goodness, right? I mean, no, but it's a neat thing. And then when the communities get together and they begin to recognize, it and are involved in it, you start layering all those things together, and you end up with something that's, that's very special. And it is an honor for me and a privilege, and I appreciate you thanking me. But really, I feel like we need to thank you, and that's why we do this. The foundation does this to honor, connect, and heal. The name of the podcast. That's the name of our podcast. It's the name of our program, essentially, really. I mean, the outdoor sporting aspect of it. And, I want to thank you for all that you do, helping, those veterans out there. Now that you're out there doing the work, you're on these events. And when was the last event you were on? I think I know, but I don't want to. I don't want to be. What was it?
I just got back from the Mid-Missouri. It's the inaugural, the first event, Mid-Missouri turkey hunt, and it was absolutely a great event. We had myself and 3 others out there, and it was turkeys can be difficult to hunt, right? But we all had opportunities, and we were 3 of us were successful, and even the one that wasn't quite successful, still great memories. And luckily no damage done to the animal or anything. But spending time. I did want to say this, like you had mentioned, giving back, right? That's one thing that I've really enjoyed about this, because Mother Nature has given me a lot, as far as harvest and memories and time spent in the woods. But giving back and giving those experiences to somebody else has been something that's really, really fed my heart and my soul, because I love giving people those experiences and those memories, because at some point, that's kind of what you have left over, right? And I've kind of lived my life to have great memories and good stories to tell. And so it's a special thing when you get to spend that with somebody inside of a blind or wherever that may be. But just sharing those experiences in those times, like it's great to be able to give back in those. So
yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Well, and you know what else is great? And I didn't plug our host out there. We have like 42 events this year in 2024, where we're going to deliver 3 to 5, in some cases more, but typically it's 3 to 5 combat wounded veterans with a guide like you, delivering them to some American sportsmen or women who've stepped up to the plate, found the WWI and said, I want to help. And we built an event around their opportunity and idea within their community. Now, without them, we wouldn't, we would have just had Camp Hackett. I mean, that's what I did. I bought some chunk of terrain up there and started, bringing guys and gals up there they were wounded. But, here we are, 17, almost 18 years into it. And, there's 42 events across the country, and these great hosts that we call them event hosts, who are opening up their homes and their properties and their opportunities that they have to share their bounty with combat wounded veterans, providing them an opportunity they would otherwise never have with a piece of, throw on top of that a piece of leadership like you, an individual who's trained through our guide school and understands how we like to operate and the culture that we've created. And that's when I sit back, now and look at it and hear your stories. I mean, I'm living vicariously through many of you, and it's just so cool, man. I mean, I'm so proud of you. I always want to thank you for what you're doing. And maybe you don't look at it that way, but if you were me sitting in my chair, you look at this and go, these great Americans are out there leading their peers and sharing this magic and these experiences with these other wounded veterans. And that's, how could you not, with American volunteers who want to help you, I mean, how can you not look at that and go, holy cow, that doesn't warm your heart. You're probably not American.
Yeah. And shout out to all those people, those event hosts and people that help out. And that's another thing that's really cool to see as far as these communities coming together, some small communities, some larger. But, whether it be an event or, type of fundraising or anything like that, just seeing these people open their homes and their hearts, having 4 strangers coming into their house, and providing everything for them, laying it out for them, and, providing the land and the animals and things like that. And I can't thank those people enough to do that, because it really does. It warms my heart as well to see those people. You can see the joy that they get from, giving back to us. Combat veterans. And so it's an amazing thing to see. And you can just see all the love in the community, and it's very warm and welcoming. And it's really, really appreciated.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's a very special and sacred, space. And I don't know really how to describe it, but I talk about it like it's space, it's expansive. There's a lot going on, and we talk about it all day long. But at the end of the day, I feel very privileged to be, part of it. And I certainly thank you for all that you've done, for your continued leadership and support. It means a lot to me. And I just want to publicly thank you for that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that very much.
Yep. And, I gave you the last whack at the piñata here. Is there anything that any saved rounds or thoughts that you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I think I just kind of doubled down on what I was saying about all these event hosts and everybody that helps out with these. To those that I've spent time with, and I've been, again, within 6 years, I think I've been on, I'd have to get a count, but close to probably 20 different events. And some are return trips, and again, the friendships that I've made and the people that have shown their hearts and everything, I can't thank them all enough. I mean, everybody that it takes a village in some ways, to get some of these events going and things. And I can't thank them enough, honestly. I know those are kind of simple words, but really, I just want to thank them that they have given me those opportunities. They've given me those memories, created that space for healing, and, that comfortable spot for us to be able to sit around a campfire and, kind of talk about some stuff if we feel like it, and just a chance to be ourselves again. And so it's very much appreciated.
Yeah, that's well said. I've said this before on other programs, but you don't have to go back too far into our nation's history. Say 1975. Vietnam's over. Our guys are home or coming home, and they're not welcome back. Yeah, this just blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that we would bring American soldiers and Marines and airmen, foremen, etc., and our Navy brethren, and back from foreign soil, and have them not be welcome, no matter what the outcome of the event was, political or non-political, and not welcome them home. That was just that to me is criminal.
Yeah,
and that happened in this country, and it happened a lot, and that's just wrong. And I think we as a country have improved a lot since then. We've learned a lot too. Thank goodness. But when you juxtapose that with this idea of Americans who are volunteering and opening of their homes, hearts, communities to welcome our combat wounded home, even though quite a bit of time has passed since Vietnam, but this, since we left Afghanistan, since, 9/11, this current generation, it doesn't matter what era you got your Purple Heart from, you are welcome and highly encouraged to get involved and be part of the WWIA. Even if you weren't combat wounded, there's always ways for you to give and give back and be part of this. But we certainly have come a long way. And when you look at what's going on out there today across the landscape of America, it's just wonderful, and today it's easy to focus on all the things that are wrong and going on in this country that we don't like, but there's still some really good things that are happening out there if you go out there and look for them, or somebody makes you part of or aware of what's going on. And I think it's important to, we all have a tendency to focus on things that are wrong, but there are a lot of things that are also right. And I think what the foundation is doing out there, thanks to all the great people who have gravitated towards it, to help the recovery efforts of our wounded veterans. I want to thank you personally as well, as Asa just did. But thanks for all you do, because we certainly couldn't do it without you, and we really appreciate it. So, Asa, thank you. God bless you, brother. It's great to see you, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wish you all the best in your travels and pursuits. I hope that our paths will cross very soon once again. And maybe it'll be at Camp Hackett. We'll try to maybe get you up there with a traditional bow and be the first guy that ever takes a big Wisconsin black bear with a bow. How about that?
Yeah, I'd love an opportunity for that. That's amazing. It kind of feeds into my Native American background a little bit as well. So
I think we need to do that.
Yep. All about it.
Thanks a lot, man. You have a great day. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Asa Barrett.
Thank you very much.
All right. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Thanks, John.
Thank you for listening to the WWIA podcast. To learn more about the Wounded Warriors in Action Foundation and how you can get involved, please visit our website at WWIAF.org. or follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. If you'd like to comment or offer feedback about our podcast, or if you have a suggestion for a future episode, please email us at podcast@wwiaf.org. Thank you for your support and for helping us honor, connect, and heal our combat wounded Purple Heart heroes through the power of the great outdoors.